y'all. Amanda here from Amanda Lynn, LLC. So thinking about thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it's really important to get in touch with what those are and how they show up in our lives, to be able to identify what are my needs, what are my emotions, and how does this impact me. On a psychosomatic level, there's no questioning that our thoughts affect our body and our bodies will respond to that. So it's imperative that we understand what these thoughts, feelings, and emotions are so that we can make better friends with them, to make better friends with our feelings. And at the end of the day, we'll not lose ourselves in a world that is full of grief, discomfort, and unruly accidents at times. By the age 21, 22 for girls and 23, 24 for boys, that's when there's full prefrontal cortex pineal gland development. And this is when you can look back on your life and say, what happened to me? What did I learn? What did my environment teach me? And how do I want to unlearn or decondition certain aspects and relearn what I want instead? In the world today, there seems to be a lot of conflict, a lot of compassion fatigue, and a lot of this I don't care epidemic. And this is causing people to lose this sense of self-actualization, self-worth, and self-love. Because as long as there's two sides of the coin of self-love to self-loathing, we have to choose a side. Otherwise, there's always going to be a dualistic dance between that who am I versus the standing strong and the I am. So understanding that at a certain point, we can play dueling parts in life. At the end of the day, it's about our character values, who we are as individuals, how we want to be treated, and how we treat others. So even though we all have dualistic roles, it's all about how we choose to align ourselves in this whole person philosophy between cognitive, behavioral, and emotional needs, as well as that conscious, subconscious, and unconscious parts of ourselves that all show up at times. When I talk about unconscious parts of ourselves, we could talk about the animus, the anima, the shadow part of ourselves, our dreams, things of this nature. I feel like for when I've talked to women that experience menstrual cycles and they have this week before this menstruation, and how women will become very emotional, and we have this diagnosis called PMDD, post-menstrual dysphoric disorder. And when this happens, a lot of women don't understand where these very strong feelings and thoughts can come from. And yet at the same time, is it that collective unconscious that's been with us for centuries across the whole universe that says we're just one molecule, one atom that makes up a whole, this whole? And so how do we offer ourselves the compassion in those moments to meet our needs, even though it's so unconscious, it's not even something that we've chosen to have to go through, and yet it's something that we need to be able to cope with regardless, just as with any other trauma, transition, or accident that might occur in life. One another example being grief. If there's loss or transition in life, how comfortable are we with the idea of knowing ourselves after such a transition, or how to have the tools to go through a transition like that if it were to occur? Knowing that within our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, we can continue to identify what those things are, even during hard times, to continue to cope, still find wholeness in the world, even though it's ever changing. Self-compassion, self-love, self-appreciation are all great tools. One thing's for sure is that we're usually used to giving that to others, especially if our parents taught us well to teach to respect our authorities. So giving ourselves the same loving kindness that we would give anybody else is the one thing that I'm working for the most in my practice. How can people really come from a place of center to say, I show up in love and appreciation to share this love and appreciation with you? And it's one of the bigger tools in life, whether it's through circumstances, religion, politics, where this may have been deconditioned from sexism to rights and all these other rules and laws that have come up over time that have depreciated people's humanistic value. The humanistic value to know we all have our own truth. We all have our own opinion, and we're all allowed to provide these statements towards others as long as they come from a place of serenity and peace, so that we can work to agree to disagree. It doesn't mean that we have to have an altercation all because we have a difference of opinion. It can mean that we can actually create a sense of unity in our differences by being able to congregate and be able to have healthy conversations and in healthy ways. So what I'm seeing a lot of is that people just don't know how to communicate anymore because there's so much violence and hatred and self-pity and all these other shame pieces that come up through fear. And yet, if we're able to understand ourselves, then there's no reason to project that onto other people. It really is a simple process. Within our own sense of self-regulation, we don't have to project that onto others. We can say, this is okay for me, this is not okay for me, this is a boundary or not. And be very clear in communication without having to drag it out, to rough it out, to continue to argue about it, to continue to work towards the gold and clearing out the mud and creating clarity in the identity versus muddying up the water and saying, well, I want this and I want that, or going back on our word and so on and so forth. So the more that we're able to communicate about our needs and understand what these thoughts, feelings, and emotions are trying to show us by listening to the body, if we're having anxiety, that's what's going to tell us our truth. That's what's going to tell us we're safe. And if we don't feel safe in certain communities, then what do we need to create that separateness in healthy ways while allowing everybody to create their own sense of inner peace? And this is where, yes, we have laws for harming others and things like that. And yet, at a very humanistic level, have we forgotten that on just the individual parts of ourselves? Have we started to hate ourselves? Have we started to hate our neighbors? Have we started to hate the people that have been in our communities just because of differences? And this is where we can continue to use regulation exercises, grounding exercises to cue into, how can I get my point across without creating violence? By staying in my regulation, by staying in my discernment, by staying in my code of what I view as right, while not putting that onto others and having a healthy conversation. So we can talk about vagus nerve exercises for first being able to regulate this mind-body, and then we would talk about healthy communication skills such as I statements, reflective listening, taking turns, no foul language. And I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are rolling their eyes at the moment. But if this was so easy, then I wouldn't have a job. So it's always good to at least bring it up and have those conversations, to remember to always empower one another. And if anybody, empower yourself. Be your own best friend. Give yourself the kinds of words of reassurance that you would want the rest of the world to hear. Put yourself on that podium box and lift yourself up. If nobody else will, treat yourself the way you want to see others be treated in the world, as Gandhi said. So be your own best friend, lift yourself up by your bootstraps, and lead by example for what you want to continue to see in the world. And know that that loving kindness is just one more leading example towards that appreciation that we want to continue to work for everyone. So keep up the great work. Always practice that self-care, practice the loving kindness and self-appreciation. Self-compassion practices can go very far. Reach out anytime with any questions or comments. I'm open to any feedback, and have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead.